Oh, hi guys, how are we? All well? All ready for a bedtime story? Well, tonight we've got Mr. Forgetful, which is one of my favourites. So, off we go. It was one of those beautiful summer mornings that everybody likes to see. In Forget-Me-Not Cottage, the owner was fast asleep. Mr. Forgetful, he was having a dream. And then the sun streaming through the windows woke up Mr. Forgetful. Oh dear me. He yawned and stretched his arms and tried to remember what he'd been dreaming about. But of course he couldn't, because Mr. Forgetful can't remember anything. At all. Ever. Now Mr. Forgetful got out of bed and went to wash his face. But he'd forgotten where the bathroom was in his house. And so do you know what he did? He walked straight into the wardrobe. Silly me. God. He giggled to himself. Eventually, of course, Mr. Forgetful found his bathroom and washed his face. He even remembered to clean his teeth. Then he went downstairs to make himself some breakfast. He toasted some bread, but of course he forgot about it, and it was burnt. He boiled himself an egg, but of course he forgot about that too, and it was hard-boiled. Mr. Forgetful has burnt toast and hard-boiled eggs for breakfast every day. Now, it was such a lovely day, Mr. Forgetful decided to walk down to the village to buy a stamp for a letter he'd written 3 weeks ago but had forgotten to post. Off he set. And did he remember to shut the door of Forget-Me-Not Cottage behind him? Of course he didn't.
Good morning, Mr. Forgetful,
said Mrs. Parcel in the village post office.
What can I do for you this very fine morning?
I'd like, I forget.
A stamp, perhaps?
Suggested Mrs. Parcel, looking at the letter that Mr. Forgetful was carrying. That's it, a stamp. That's what I was trying to remember not to forget, said Mr. Forgetful. Mrs. Parcel smiled. She was used to Mr. Forgetful. Mr. Forgetful had some more shopping to do. But could he remember what it was he was supposed to remember not to forget to shop for? Of course he couldn't. So he decided to go home. On his way home, he met the village policeman going the other way. Morning, Mr. Forgetful, said the policeman. Will you give Farmer Fields a message for me, please? Farmer Fields had a farm not very far from Forget-Me-Not Cottage. Tell him there is a sheep loose in the lane, said the policeman. Poor Mr. Forgetful. He'd never had anything to remember before. Never had a message to remember before. There's a sheep loose in the lane. Yeah, there's a sheep loose in the lane. There's a sheep loose in the lane. There's a sheep loose in the lane. He kept saying it over and over to help him remember. There's a sheep loose in the lane. There's a sheep loose in the lane. There's a sheep loose. Mr. Forgetful said it over and over and over to himself. Eventually, he arrived at the farm and found Farmer Fields. Oh yeah, Mr. Fields. There's a goose asleep in the rain. Farmer Fields couldn't believe his ears. There is a goose asleep in the rain, repeated Farmer Fields slowly. But I haven't got any geese. And anyway, it isn't raining. Are you sure that was the message you were supposed to give me? Poor Mr. Forgetful. He'd got it all wrong. And he couldn't remember how to get it all right. He simply couldn't remember anything at all. So off he went home. Poor Mr. Forgetful. Mr. Forgetful walked away from Farmer Fields' farm feeling very sorry for himself. Oh, I wish I could remember things, he thought. And he was so busy feeling sorry for himself that he didn't see that there was a sheep loose in the lane. He bumped into it and fell over. Oh, bother, said Mr. Forgetful.
Meh,
said the sheep. Well, how silly that is, leaving a sheep loose in the lane like that. I mean, you could... And then he remembered the message. He jumped up and ran back along the lane as fast as he could. Mr. Fields, look, there's a goose asleep in the rain. He'd forgotten again. Mr. Fields scratched his head. Well, look, just come with me, will you? Just come with me. Come on, cried Mr. Forgetful. And he pulled Farmer Fields back along the lane until they came to the sheep that was loose. There it is, mate, there it is, he cried, pointing. A goose. And then he stopped. Oh dear. That's not a goose, is it? That's a sheep. And then he blushed. Oh. I think, smiled Farmer Fields, that you're the goose, my friend. And he chuckled. And Mr. Forgetful chuckled. And then they both laughed. Oh! And even the sheep started to laugh. It was so funny. Later that day, Mr. Forgetful sat down in his favourite armchair in Forget-Me-Not Cottage to think about what a funny day it had been. But do you know something? He tried and tried, but try as he might, he simply couldn't remember anything that had happened. Oh, Mr. Forgetful. Well, how about that? Enjoy that one, guys? I like that one quite a lot. That was Mr. Forgetful. Well, make sure you sleep well tonight, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you keep happy and keep safe, okay? See you later, guys.